in his own blood, face down into it, and with obviously various acts of desecration of his body, which are normally associated with Satanist-inflicted death. Father Kunz, of course, and by the way, he was a very popular parish priest with his people. He had done exorcisms, but very, very private. Most of us don't talk about them because they usually involve confessional material. And Father Kunz was a very good priest and never spoke about confessional material.
Had he been in communication with you?
Yes, we had been in communication.
Do you know offhand if he was doing anything at the time? I'm sure the police are probably asking about this, but it's an obvious question.
They are, and they are refusing to give any of the more lurid details on the motive of death, for the simple reason that they don't want to. They suspect it's somebody within his vicinity, not a stranger. And there are only, I think, a couple of hundred people. Well, no, about 700, 800 people involved. There certainly is not a random act of violence, somebody who wanted to steal or was caught in the act of stealing and simply flailed out. They're convinced it wasn't a random act like that, that it was a deliberately set up thing, and at least one person was involved in it, perhaps more. Kunz himself had just been doing radio shows with a priest friend whom we all know very much, Father Fiore, and they returned home late at night, late being about 10 o'clock in the evening, and we know that he was alive at 10:30 because he made a telephone call or received a telephone call, I forget which. But then the following morning at 7 o'clock, a young man came to assist him at Mass, etc., found him lying, as I said, in his own blood, with this very, very sinister mode of death etched on his body. There's no doubt about it that it is related. Whether it's related to his very confidential activity as a priest in regards to covens of warlocks in neighboring areas, we may never know. We may never know. We may never know because, number one, the police have a habit in this country that whenever there's, and it's a good habit on the whole, whenever there is any real Satanist activity of a shocking kind, they don't publish the details that indicate the Satanist connection. They just they publish the bare details of a murder.
Why do you think that, Father?
Well, it's also you asked me why I think it's a good idea, because it doesn't evoke the copycat syndrome. These things do, because about 300 years, 200 years ago, they stopped doing exorcisms in public precisely because it evoked the copycat syndrome in people, imitators.
Well, you have told me many times, since you have done so many exorcisms, that there is real, very serious, very real danger. Is it not possible, it's got to be possible, that in his work, in some way, in the middle of some exorcism or as part of an ongoing one, or, who knows?
I have no doubt about that. The answer to your question I can foresee and interpret is no doubt about it. The death was not random. It was not an act of personal vengeance, somebody who got annoyed at him for some particular thing. It was in connection with his work as a priest and in the area of demonic possession.
Father, have you ever been concerned at that level? Have you ever, without being specific, because I know you can't about specific exorcisms, have you ever been concerned for yourself in
very
same way?
Very, very same way. But you learn after a certain time to take that added risk, and you take precautions. But yes, surely, and at times the menace or the threat is more patent or obvious than at other times. Sure. And sometimes it's quite voluble, it's quite expressive. You're warned, and more than one good priest in that part of the world, especially one or two very prominent ones, got telephone calls pointing out that they will go the same way.
Oh?
Yes, and one of them actually had to hire a bodyguard, or was given a bodyguard by the police because of his prominence.
Well, you've been a very prominent exorcist. Have you received threats?
Oh yes, in the past, yes. Not recently, but in the past, yes, very much.
Not as part of this or a connected...
No, not part of this, but I wasn't in any way related to this. And as one person told me, sort of happily, because we don't belong to an umbrella organization, exorcists, in other words, those engaged in this area, because we don't belong to an umbrella organization, they can't identify every one of us, and therefore pick us off. But we are picked off, all right, there's no doubt about that. And they're not the first, Father Kunz is not the first priest who was picked off as a priest, and as somebody who blocked or interfered with or spoiled Luciferian plans. There's no doubt about that.
Well, the fact that he is now dead would tell me that Luciferian plans are somehow still underway in whatever case.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are.
Is evil in America, evil in the world, increasing?
Well, the only way I can answer that question without sort of sensationalism art is as follows, that since 1972 or 3, when the group I'm associated with started, and it's a very quiet, discreet group, but since then, incidences and types of demonic assault have increased. First of all, the increase has been about 750%. Since that time,
750.
about 750, judging by figures. And this is in the northeast corner of America, the tri-state area essentially, although it takes in outlying areas too. But in the types of possession, we have now the two phenomena that are very interesting. We have the phenomenon of the 20-something or 30-something that comes and says, look, Father, I want to such and such a job, or I want to get this particular woman. I want to make this marriage.
Yes.
I want this money. And I made a pact with Satan, with the devil, and I got it. Now he won't let go of me. This didn't occur before, in my experience, in the limited experience I have. And secondly, then there's the...
This is how recent, this phenomenon, how recent?
The last 10 years.
The last 10 years.
Last 10 years. And then there is also the second one, the second form, which is a bit off-putting, to put it mildly, that we now find the age is younger. We find children, those who we would technically call children, 6 years old, who are obviously not merely obsessed, but on their way to full possession.
There was a recent case in Arkansas that I'm sure you heard of, in which a couple of young fellows decided they were going to kill their classmates and teachers and pulled a fire alarm.
Yes.
And brought rifles and lots of ammunition and simply started shooting students and teachers.
That's right.
Just started shooting.
That's right. But I wish I knew the details of that case, but again, the police are singing mum, as they say. They're saying nothing about the details. And there's a great protectiveness web wove around those young,
of course, yes, juveniles, yes.
Juveniles, but we don't know the details of it at all.
An awful lot of that going on, if that corroborates what you were saying.
There is, and there's much more than is reported in public by the media. And in several states, there's an agreement, sort of an unwritten agreement between the police and the governor. There's an unwritten agreement that no details will ever be published without formal permission by the media or by the police of any obviously Satanist or Luciferian happening.
Well, I understand that on the one hand with regard to the possibility of copycat crimes. However, if this really is on the increase in America now, shouldn't we know about it?
Yes, I think we should. The incidences is more frequent as far as the incidence of it. And if you drew a graph, you'd find an increase of over 700% since the early 1970s.
Now, who keeps track of that? Are you the one?
We do in this northeast corner of the United States. That's why I'm only talking about that too. I could make oblique references, but that'd be anecdotally as regards evidence to other parts of the country.
But you're sure of what you're saying with regard to the Northeast?
I'm unfortunately rather sure of that. And also the what has come to light is that it is not so surprising for a lot of people that there are covens amongst the very educated class, architects, doctors, lawyers, priests, brokers, and the leisure class.
These are people who have made pacts with the devil.
That's right. It's really the best, the more accurate way of describing it would be that they have indulged themselves in the worship of the goat, of the prince, of the serpent, of Satan, of Lucifer, and they lead perfectly normal lives. They're jewel merchants. They travel. They're prominent in their own way, but they do have this indulgence.
Well, here's a part of that I can never understand. That has never made sense to me, and that is, if somebody were to make a pact with the devil, then obviously the implication is if the devil is there to make a pact with them, to make a deal, to make their life, this short mortal life on earth, pleasurable, with money or women or travel or
more interesting,
whatever it is they want.
Yes.
Then they are aware of the presence of the devil, and they are obviously aware then of the presence of God as well, and they nevertheless make a conscious, stupid, short-term, blind choice to take what they can get in this lifetime. And to embrace one, you must embrace the other. It's not like it's some wishy-washy person.
I know you do. It is very not easy to understand, except when you talk with them, when they let their hair down and peel grapes, as we say, and when they're on their way to being cured of what they, or healed is the proper word. You find that there's an exhilaration and a satisfaction which is both sensual and sexual and mental when they really indulge in Luciferian worship. There is a peculiar exhilaration.
Like a drug, then?
Yes, it's a peculiar exhilaration, and of course, the godly instincts in us all, the angelic in us all, because we all have something angelic and something godly, besides everything else, a lot of other negative things, that is quenched, and you find in them a horror of anything what we call sacred and holy, or sacrosanct, or the idea of the sacred, of the awesome.
I only heard this once, Father. We talked about this. I interviewed a Satanist. Her name was Patsy. And this caused a great deal of controversy after the last program that I did with you. I got many, many messages about it. Patsy was a devil worshiper. No question about it. No question about it. Toward the end of the program, she revealed to me that her husband had murdered her little child, a several-year-old child, and she said, I said to her, well, you're sure not going to be with your daughter, are you? In other words, your daughter's going to be in heaven, and you're going to be acknowledged you're going to be in hell. She said, oh no, I took steps to ensure that my my daughter would be in hell with me. And I asked you about that. Was that possible, I asked? And you said yes. And then, by the way, you're not the only one who said yes. A couple of other experts said the same thing.
Sure.
And people just went berserk. They said, no, it can't be.
I'm sorry, it is. You see, sometimes we moderns think with a very peculiar and artificial frame of reference as regards the human soul and the human mind. We're not talking, if we really are realistic, we're talking about the basic inclination of the human soul, the human spirit, and not about some informed concept.
So we are making these statements based on what our own frame of reference is.
That's right.
Not what spiritual reality is.
Exactly. And it's a frightening thing when you come across what we all know is called bad seed. It's a frightening thing. It's like those two little boys in England that were that boy in England who killed off two of his little children. It's a frightening thing when you meet it because it's art, and let me try and convey it to you, your listeners. You come across this extraordinary.
Father, I'll tell you what. We're at the bottom of the hour.
Okay, why don't we wait?
So why don't we wait? And this is something I would like conveyed.
Sure.
Stay right there. Father Malachi Martin from New York City is my guest. And we are about also to discuss what has happened in the Vatican hours ago. In all of man's living memory, there has not been murder in the Vatican until tonight. This is Coast to Coast AM.
Was the fact that there's nothing more appalling for the mind that I have anyway, than to come across a person technically considered a child with the hard glare of consummate hatred and complete lack of the normal reactions of compassion, feeling, and understanding. And we do find that today, I was going to say increasingly, but there's a certain increase amongst the age group of 5 to 8. That's a very disturbing thing. And it's impossible to say that it's developed by TV, by violence on TV, and that's for business. We don't know. There's no official inquiry into it because many of the people who should be, like, for instance, there's one section of the FBI, I think, bioethical laboratory or something. I forget the exact title of it. One of their institutes, institutes in Washington is supposed to inquire into it, but they poo-poo the idea of active Satanism.
Well, all right. Here's what it seems like to me, the layman. It seems like we have some soulless people being born. I mean, even little children. Certainly, when I was little, I remember I understood life, the value of life, and right and wrong. And now we have children that are killing, and when asked why they did it, they get really interesting answers, like to see what it would feel like.
That's right.
That sort of thing.
That's right.
This is from what I would consider to be a soulless being. Either that or otherwise, you covered the ground, television, the rest of it. So then why? What's happening?
Well, those of us who are engaged in the field of demonology always find finally the footprint of the goat, the footprint of Lucifer. And that is a very distinctive thing. Very distinctive thing. And what is disturbing is that many times young persons of this ilk are very brilliant. mentally. They're not stupid. They're not dull. They're not yokels. They're not, they're not stupid. On the contrary, they're quite intelligent. Outstrip their peers.
Well, in an academic sense, yes.
In an academic sense. And that's a bit frightening because they're intelligent and they dodge the issue. And the whole thing is very disturbing. And of course it goes back to the breakdown of the family as such in our population. I mean, take for instance the figure which is solid, that 33% of all births are illegitimate.
33% of all births are illegitimate.
That's right.
Well, fully 1/3.
Yeah. And sociologists are weary and tired out depicting the general tendency amongst the illegitimate to all sorts of perversions and deficiencies, societal and personal. So I suppose that's part of that picture, but there's still this footprint, this touch of nativism. Yes, it's a smell, it's a print. You know that some being with a hoof, to use the image, with cloven hoofs, as you know, the Irish have a tradition of that if you have a vision, an apparition of somebody who claims to be the Virgin Mary or Christ and or a saint, always look at the feet. This is the Irish idea that they can imitate everything except he can't hide his cloven feet. But it's an Irish pishog, as they say in Gaelic. It's an Irish saying, but there's a lot in it. And I know apparitions or appearances of the Virgin that took place in various parts of Europe, and people who took photographs of the visions and apparitions could never get a picture of their feet. It's an Irish thing.
An Irish thing.
Yes.
I have a question for my wife, which is kind of an odd question. I don't know why she's asking this, but I'll ask it, and it is the following. With respect to exorcisms,
yes.
Has it ever occurred, Father, that anybody listening to the tape of an exorcism, or in fact watching a videotape of an exorcism,
yes.
Has, as a result of that, been possessed?
Well, the answer is this. It has happened in our records.
Really?
People who looked at or saw tapes, where we make videotapes, which are very private, or audio tapes of exorcisms, that they, rare cases, rare enough anyway, that they went for a pact. They invited demonic invasion. Yes, I know.
There's a lot of very weak people out there spiritually,
and it's very exciting. I remember well being brought into a discussion about 10 years ago now in New York, in a very fashionable hotel, by people who wanted desperately to participate in a Satanist exorcism. First of all, in Satanist rule rights, and doing everything that Satanists did. I had to keep on warning them, you can't do that with impunity. But they wanted the thrill of it.
Well, to some degree, I understand that. In other words, to view an exorcism, to see the presence of Satan,
No.
confirms the presence of God. And I know you need no such confirmation, but for many, it would be a confirmation of that kind. That's why I have a hard time understanding why those who have confirmed that Satan is as real as can be can choose that path. It's just unimaginable to me.
Because one basic reason is that once you delve in, once you tamper into it, once you tamper with it, it does infection. It gives power to that evil spirit, and you can't easily get out of it. There's infection.
All right. You were advisor to two popes.
That's right.
Tonight there is news that just hours ago, for the first time in living human memory, actually about 150 years, they
That's a
estimate.
very good way of putting it, in living memory.
You know, there has been, well, it says a member of the Pope's elite Swiss Guard apparently shot and killed his new commander and the official's wife Monday night, then turned the gun on himself, all within Vatican walls. A next-door neighbor found the bodies. The Vatican spokesman said this was all done in what he called, quote, a moment of madness, end quote. What in the world could be going on in the Vatican?
Well, I'll tell you, Art, a word to the wise. With anything like this that involves the inner life of a institution which has now centuries-old precautions against publicity and being known what really goes on there, one has to be very, very circumspect and careful about any details released about something that they can't hide very well. It's very hard to hide the death of two officials
Yes.
and the wife of one. You can't hide that very well.
Well, it's not being hidden. Believe me, it's a lead news item.
I know.
Reuters.
They can't do anything about it. But as to the details, the devil is in the details, as they say. And the details have not been published. We do not know really what happened, except that 3 people are dead. And one apparently, according to the official account, by his own hand. A moment of insanity, momento di insania, yes, that's one way of covering the issue. It was a general blanket.
A very careful statement, a moment of madness.
Yes, it's a nice way of conceiving, yes, there was a dreadful thing. What it does indicate is this: murder, the killing of another human being, the shedding of blood, is one of the sure signs of demonic interference.
But in the Vatican?
Well,
I mean, is that a likely target in place, or is that an unlikely target in place?
no. Remember, just 2 popes ago, one pope said, Paul VI was his name. He died in 1978, and I knew him very well. He said the smoke of Satan has entered the sanctuary. And I think you'll remember a book of mine published in 1996 describing a Luciferian ceremony within the precincts of the Vatican. And remember that the Vatican, the Pope, has in his entourage, he has the chief exorcist, here we all know him, Father Gabriel Amor, and there are 8 employees, exorcists, that work both in Rome and Milan and Turin. So there is a lot there. What we've just seen, the crack has opened, and we've seen one effect of it. Put it like this, Art. For somebody in my position, from what I know of how this institutional organization works, it is impossible that there be a triple death by violence within the precincts of the Vatican, amongst Vatican people, unless it is impossible that should happen without demonic interference. Because the thing is should be in principle so sacrosanct and so preserved from such activity that it might take place outside, but not inside.
I was there. I was in the Vatican. And to contemplate that occurring is almost beyond...
I know that. I realize fully how it has impacted you, as we say. But so my word to everybody is, we won't know the details for a long time, if ever in our lifetime. Just as other assassinations that took place in the Vatican, we haven't got a detail yet.
What the Vatican is its own sovereign state, is it not?
Absolutely.
So that the investigation, the details of it, the suspects, the people who would be caught, and then I have no idea what in the Vatican if they came up with suspects. How are things handled in the Vatican?
Oh, they have their own way of dealing with that. They have their own way of dealing with that.
So the Italian law in no way bears on the Vatican.
Now, normally, let's take a banal example. If somebody is found inside of the Vatican Museum trying to make off with a valuable chalice or something,
yes,
they of course, put him in the Vatican prison, which they have, and they call in the police. And it's, a normal thing like that.
And they are turned over to Italian authorities.
Yes, they are. Normal evil.
Normal evil, yeah.
No, anything which really comes from deep within and betrays the presence of betrays that footprint again. And this does, and that's dealt with in camera, and dealt with away from the prying eyes of the media and of the world. It's impossible for them to hide everything, and very early on we all knew, in this incident, we all knew that something had happened, but the race in the various news media, the CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, to try and get some substance to what they were hearing was fantastic to watch. Of course, nothing came out because the Vatican has been sort of choking off everything.
Well, the pressure on the Vatican from the media over this is going to be big.
It is going to be big.
And do you think they will just hold their silence?
They will, but there's always the inevitable tipster, the inevitable sale of news. And that's what will probably happen.
I would imagine that Catholics all over the world, which look to the Vatican spiritually,
yeah,
will want to know if their spiritual capital is under siege.
That's right. And then, there's another consideration which is painful for me anyway, because I'm a papist, as you know, in spite of the fact that I have my criticisms of the Pope, and served with, and the Pope I didn't serve with, and I have strong critiques of the present Holy Father, who is my Pope. But I have strong critiques of him. But on another plane, this is a dreadful slap in the face to John Paul II. Because this happened under his watch. No matter how you cut it, he's the boss. He's in charge.
So really, it works in the Vatican like it looked worse in Washington.
Yes, it does.
Good economic times, the president gets the credit. Bad economic times, the president gets blamed.
Exactly. Oh, yes, it does. And you see, it does reflect on his administration. It does reflect on the spirit he has installed now for almost 20 years, as Pope. And as long as I've been saying all along, for a long time, there is a spirit of secularization going on in John Paul II's Vatican, which makes possible such incidents as this and other incidents too shall not come to light. So it must be a cause of great anguish to John Paul II.
I'm certain that is so, but you're saying even the what I would think of as relatively small moves, because it looked very non-secular when I was there. But these small moves would invite in the possibility, you're saying, of what has happened?
Yes, they do. They do. The old Italian saying, which I can't quote any longer than the Italians, because I forget it, is that any crack in the wall and the wisp of Satan enters, the wisp of evil enters. And there is a process a gentle process. The intention is ecumenical. The intention is to be like the rest of the world. The intention is not to be so remote. But there has been a tendency in the pontificate of John Paul II to be so accommodating. Let me give you one example. No Pope, believe you me, no Pope of the 263 popes before him would have sat down with the leader of the voodoo priests of Haiti. Which he did.
He did.
And he said to them, look, Father Maurice, I think Maurice was the name of the head of the voodoo expert priest in Haiti. Look, we are interested in your religion and you should be interested in our religion. I think that is something which is unheard of in Catholic tradition. Or John Paul II himself has gone to a secret island of the Madagascar Republic. They drank from the sacred water, from the sacred fountain of the god, of the local god worshipped. That is, or he sat in a phallus-shaped chair in India and had the mark of Kali put in his forehead.
Father, hold on.
That is something which, violates.
Listen, are you suggesting that the present Pope may himself be under...
No, I'm suggesting that he has drawn on himself demonic attention which he could have avoided.
All right, Father Malachi Martin, hold it right there. That's plenty, thank you, to digest for the moment. From the high desert, this is Coast to Coast AM. His wife shot. Another man who shot them committed suicide. All of this inside the walls of the Vatican. The killing, the first inside the walls of the Vatican in our living memory. I guess there may have been 150 years ago something may have happened. And we were talking about that before the break. Just an incredible occurrence. And Father Martin began to say that Pope John Paul, I think this bears repeating and trying to understand, Father. Pope John Paul has been in some way affected himself.
It must be a cause of great anguish for him.
Well, you said that, but you said that he went to a voodoo, and I'm not really caught up on this, Father.
Well, he went to Haiti. He had a papal trip to Haiti, and during that trip he met officially with the head of the, I think it's 15,000 voodoo priests that live in Haiti, and sat down with him. We have the photographs that I have here in my files, and one of the things he said was, with typical John Paul II ecumenism, look, we are interested in your doctrine and we think you should be interested in our Catholic doctrine.
How?
Yeah, I know, it leaves you speechless.
That's right.
Or, in years that passed, when he went to India, John Paul II permitted a young lady in a sari to put the sign of Kali on his forehead with that red stain. And he sat in a chair chosen by the Indian bishops, which had the phallic shape. As you know, the phallus is worshipped in Hinduism.
Why?
These were actions of John Paul II destined to create a great fellowship and feeling. For instance, let me give you an example which struck us all at the time, and it's not mentioned because people are afraid of being called anti-Semite. John Paul II went for the first time, as a pope, he went to the synagogue in Rome. The head of the synagogue is a very respectable rabbi called Eliot Toas, very well known to all of us. And they sat on a stage, or a bema, as they call it in Hebrew, on two chairs, sort of catty corner facing themselves and facing the audience. And in his speech, which is a very good speech, by the way, good address, John Paul II said his only reference was, oh, by the way, you know, our founder was of your race. That's all the testimony to Jesus that John Paul II gave. And when Vatican held a special Holocaust evening, which was standing room only, it was such a grand affair, with music and with a huge menorah lit by the grandchildren of people who had survived Auschwitz and Dachau and Birkenau, the Hitler camp. In his speech for that particular evening, which was a Holocaust evening, John Paul II consented to have the only crucifix in the hall removed in order not to offend his Jewish friends. Well, we consider that, for me to remark that, it's not anti-Semitism on my part. I've done more, I think, for Jewish-Christian relations than most people alive. It's a story you and I have never delved into, which we will ask another broadcast, please God. But the fact we find this, no pope before John the 23rd, before John Paul II, would have allowed it. If a cardinal did that, under any of the other popes, the cardinal would be sent away to live life out in a monastery on the top of the Sierra Madre.
Why has John Paul done it?
It is his form of ecumenism. And look, let me make quite clear for you and for everybody listening, this man is my pope. He does represent Christ. He is the vicar of Christ for me. And if you were to speak under the conditions of infallibility, I will accept what he says. But I am allowed, nay, I am obliged by my tradition and my faith and by previous popes to critique anybody, priest, bishop, cardinal, or pope, when I think they are in error.
So a pope, then, the pope, now I'm not a Catholic, my wife is, but the pope is supposed to be, is he not, infallible?
Only under certain conditions.
Help me understand what conditions those would be. In other words,
he must state explicitly as follows, put it in my language, paraphrase it but accurately. What I'm about to tell you is something I say as the successor of Peter, and I say it with the authority of Christ as his vicar on earth, to be held by all the faithful as a matter of profound, divine Roman Catholic faith. He must say that. Now, John Paul II has never said that about anything, even about the ordination of men and women.
So then he can do that on the one hand, though he hasn't done it, and on the other can sit down with a voodoo priest.
That's right. And in his famous encyclical, which has become so popular with progressive Catholics, it's called Ut Unum Sint, that there may be one. He discussed and outlined the way he would like to take apart the whole doctrine of the Pope's primacy in order to suit non-Catholics. So John Paul II has ventured out along the edges of orthodoxy in his statements and in his preaching. But whenever he taught, he has never yet taught error infallibly. He's never adopted the infallible mode. The infallible mode is something where the Pope says, I am now doing this as the head of all the Catholics. I'm doing it as the successor of Peter, and it's to be held by all the faithful under pain of mortal sin. He has never done that yet.
Do you think he's, of course, very frail now, very old?
Very frail. He is very frail, and it makes you cry to see his face. His left eye is recalcitrant. He can't keep it open or shut. His left hand is jigging continuously.
Yes.
He doesn't look at you straight in the eye because he's bent over. And by the way, I know a man who frequents him about every 6 weeks from New York. And he says that surrounding John Paul II, in his court, in his entourage, the hate is palpable.
The hate is palpable?
Hate is palpable.
Now, Father, when you heard about murder hours ago in the Vatican, were you surprised?
No.
You were not surprised?
No, I'm not surprised. I'm appalled, of course, and shocked. because three people's lives were snuffed out by violence. And but I know that we will, in my lifetime, I may not know the real facts behind it all. And moment of insanity is a beautiful expression in Italian, but tells me nothing about the reality. But surprise? No, I can't.
Well, when you said that the Pope's entourage, that the feeling of hate was culpable, of hate of the Pope, you mean?
Yeah.
Hate of the Pope?
Yes, and of this particular Pope. And this man, by the way, is not a Christian.
I beg your pardon?
He's not a Christian. He's a technocrat who goes to the Vatican for a certain reason periodically. And he said you can't mistake the hate and dislike of this man in his immediate entourage. And so John Paul II is a pathetic figure, really. He lives with this night and day. There is no mercy for him. There is no compassion for him in his normal entourage. And he is spurned by the Patriarch of Constantinople, and he is laughed at by the Patriarch of Moscow, and he is let down by his cardinals and his bishops. He is an outcast, this Pope, and it makes me cry to know what he's going through. And yet, he has done things which we must criticize and will criticize in all trust and belief that he is our Pope, but has made mistakes. Now, the point in general about these killings, the murder and the suicides in the Vatican is that my point was that it's in his watch this has taken place, and he knows it. He's a responsible man, and he knows that this has taken place during his watch, and that therefore, somehow or other, he is responsible. He is responsible.
Would you expect a statement from the Pope?
No.
No.
Oh, he might make a reference every Wednesday, as you know, when he's at all in good shape. He gives a little sermonette from the window, from one of the windows on the fourth floor of his apartment in the Apostolic Palace, out to the crowd. There always is a crowd on Wednesday to listen to him. He may make some general reference which people will pick up on as a reference to this calamity. Because, believe you me, ecclesiastically, papally, this is a disaster. There's no doubt about it. And it's the sign of the times. I mean...
Are we to know, will we know, Father Martin, when the Antichrist is with us?
Yes, we will. We have been given 3 signs by the Scripture and confirmed by all doctrine and teaching for almost 1900 years. And it's very simple, Art. That's first of all, the first sign, the major sign is this. In his day, I mean, when he's active, because he's here already, but he's not active. But when he is active, there will be problems, human problems, confronting us as a race, as a society of nations. Problems we can't solve. Our best, the best and the brightest of our technocrats and scientists and theorists and leaders will not be able to solve. He will. That's the first thing. He will produce the solutions for them. And people will be so overwhelmed with gratitude and with relief that somebody has the solution which works, they will say to him, and the second sign is this, you must be divine. And the third sign is, he will say, kneel down and adore me, I am indeed your God. Then we have Antichrist.
You said he is here now. He is not yet active. I have heard this, that
He's alive.
the Antichrist is now alive.
And he cannot die until Christ kills him. He has this pseudo-immortality. And don't ask me where, how, who, what.
How do we know that much? How do we know that?
From the second letter of Paul to the Thessalonians. If you read carefully, those 3 signs are there. And the fathers of the church, the early writers between 100 AD and 600 AD, the early writers, the the two Gregories, the Nissan Gregory, Nazianz, and St. Basil, all those who wrote the origin, the fathers of the church, the basic writers, they all agreed on the character and the signs of the Antichrist appearance.
There are those, my listeners, many of whom believe that the signs are all around us now. The children, the blank-eyed killers, the soulless killers, the killing of exorcists, the ritual murdering of exorcists, murder in the Vatican, just to name a few of the more recent within hours. But there are people who will say, these are signs that he is with us now.
Yes, there are signs that he is with us now, but the reign of Antichrist will be very, very signal, very clear. And the only source we have is that second letter of Paul to the Thessalonians and those three signs. And he has not yet started his operation.
Well, Father, I am not going to suggest that our president is the Antichrist, and there are many in my audience,
a very naughty man.
Many who would. However, is it not reasonable to look at what the president is alleged to do on a fairly regular basis,
yes,
and then look at the national poll of approval for this president,
yes,
and make certain conclusions about the changed thinking and the acceptance level of what once would have been thought of surely as evil behavior by the American people? I mean, the acceptance of it.
Absolutely. But Art, you more than me, more than most of us, would do, I'm sure, appreciate the fact that there is now a growing gap between what the spin doctors create as the public mentality and what people are really thinking. And only if we had, do you remember what was it? The Cube, Q-U-B-E. Do you remember that Cube business? The instant reaction to the television?
I do, yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
Well, there's a very good reason why they would never install that. It was instantaneous, and it was done by computer, and if they put that in, and every one of the 40 million Americans, or roughly the adults amongst them anyway,
yes,
were able to vote, I bet you the polls would be totally different about President Clinton and everything else.
Well, they might be. Father, hold on. We're at the bottom of the hour. My guest is the exorcist, Father Malachi Martin from New York City. This is Coast to Coast AM. Maybe it was intended that you be here this night, Father.
Well, Art, these things, I heard the hesitancy in your voice when you spoke about a coincidence, because in these things, I do not think there is any coincidence.
Yeah, I'm beginning to believe that myself.
There's a certain providence over things, and you and I originally were supposed to talk about 2 weeks ago, but we had to put that off for one reason or another, and we happened to latch on to tonight, and these two things have come to a head, and other things have come to a head in the meantime too.
Before we leave the subject of the Pope and what has occurred tonight, Dan in Chicago asks the following.
Yes.
Please, if you can, tell us who are the advisors, that's in quotes, that recommended the Pope was safe to mingle with the darkness that is voodoo. I know it sounds like I'm being suspicious, but I just don't think these actions would be entered into without counsel. This could easily be the result of being too trusting with those nearest to him.
That's right. You see, the Pope has a theological commission of his own, 30 men usually. Some of them are not Catholic. Some of them don't even believe in God.
What?
Some of them certainly, leave much to be desired as regards the practice of Catholicism as such. And then There's that's factor number one. Number two, in the immediate entourage of the Pope, if you look at the people he frequents with the daily, there is no shining light that you say, gosh, that's a holy man, that's an observant man. That's somebody you can look to for principles, Catholic principles. There is nobody like that. Anybody like that who had power has had his wings shorn. Well shorn often. I remember talking to one of them recently, face to face, and he said, look, as a cardinal, what can I do? I've been stripped of all power. I said, Your Eminence, you can die. You can give testimony with your blood. At which he was mute.
Certainly was. What do you see for the future of the papacy? This man is frail. I don't know how long he will be with us. If there are hands manipulating what's occurring behind the scenes, what do you think comes next?
Well, I can have lurid thoughts, or I can have sort of pacifist thoughts. I know that he himself intends to, if that has any valency at all, he intends to live past the Y2K moment.
As a matter of fact, Father, he plans to go to Jerusalem, doesn't he?
I know. He plans that and he goes to Sinai. He wants even to retrace the steps of Abraham, who came from a town called Ur of the Chaldees in Iraq. If possible, he may be restrained in that, because did you see that the reason why the papal visit to Israel and the Middle East was put off?
Because of the problem, of course, with Jerusalem, is what they're suggesting.
No, the Vatican was very explicit about it.
Oh?
Yes, Toran, who was the sort of prime minister, if you want to put it, of the Vatican Secretary of State, said quite blatantly, the danger of war breaking out there is too much.
Well, it's another way of saying the same thing. Yes, there's probably going to be a war over Jerusalem.
I expect it. And over the whole question of the Palestinian state, because Netanyahu doesn't want a Palestinian state, and I quite understand why he doesn't. But I also understand why the Palestinians want a state. There are more of them than there are Israelis, by the way.
Does the Pope intend in that visit, if it is going to occur around the millennium, to try to bring together the three religions?
His dream is the only dream John Paul II has had. He never dreamt of controlling his bishops. He never dreamt of improving the condition of the religious orders. He never even dreamt of spreading Catholicism as a belief. His dream has always been to create a dynamic, at the center of which would be Roman Catholics. Grouped around them would be the other Christian religions or sects or churches, Greeks and Russians, and Western Protestantism. And grouped around them would be the Jewish people, and grouped around them would be the Muslims. His dream was to make out of that a dynamic the world would have to respect. And it's his dream.
Is it your dream?
No.
What do you think
What could happen
will come to pass if he lives long enough and tries this?
What will happen will be that the institutional organization of the church, as distinct from the people who live the life of the church, the supernatural life of the church, that organization will cease to be the house of Christ. That's a very dire prophecy.
Yes, it is. It sure is sounding like there are a lot of people who are worried about the year 2000, about the millennium.
Sure. And not really about the Y2K.
And that's exactly right. And there may be, I'm beginning to discern good cause to be worried about it.
There is very good cause to be concerned about it. I'll tell you, it is now what, the 4th or the 5th, isn't it?
It's now the 5th, most times.
May 1998, and it's on your show. if I'm alive, I'll be then 79, and well, and we are talking, it will be a totally changed international scene and a very changed USA. And I'm willing to make a modest bet of $5 with you on that about a very serious matter. And it will be the end of the papacy as we know it and of the institutional organization as we know it. There will be an underground church, which there exists already.
Most endings are the beginning of something else.
So true. That's one of the truest historical statements you've ever made. And you see, the comparison, please do not take this as outlandish. The comparison is Christ himself, the man, Jesus Christ, who was a very big man, according to the Shroud of Turin, and I firmly believe in that, and he was a big man, and he was crucified, and he was bled like a pig, and he died. And that body ceased to be animate. It ceased to exist and had to be put in the earth, because like every body, it was going to smell. And 3 days later, according to his followers, according to me, according to believers, he was alive and well in a glorified body. And it was really him.
Yes.
It was he. Really feeble, as they say in Latin. Alive again, and with the marks of his wounds totally healed, and he was glorified. He couldn't suffer anymore. And I think that that's what the church is going to, the Roman Catholic Church is going to go through. Crucifixion,
Resurrection.
death, and resurrection, and glorification. But in the meantime, we have to go through the agony in the garden, and the Via Dolorosa.
I was,
It isn't pleasant to think about.
I was at the very place in Bethlehem where Christ was born. They mark it. They mark it. And when you were there, when you were standing right in front of that spot, you know whether you're a religious person or not.
True.
You know.
You know, Art. You know. Something inside you and everything around you tells you that.
Yes.
It's extraordinary. You recall my moment of truth there too.
Father, here's a question from a listener. I want to try to get some of them in. Here's somebody who asks from Tucson, if there are demonic possessions, are there ever angelic possessions? What an interesting question. There are?
Of course there are. Of course there are. I know people, not many, but I know people, and I call them up in some crisis and say, by the way, such and such is needed in such and such a place. And they'll say, oh, well, there's help on the way. And they talk with their angel, and they live with them. And it's extraordinary. It covers the whole gamut, from young teenage girls to grown men in responsible places in government and in science and the profession, to old people, to little children. It runs the gamut. Yes, there are, because the thrill of the demonic, there's always that, I keep using that word because that's what makes its adherence. Outweighs danger. And then we have a show, there's a series of films on television about the angels. And of course it's the travesty of what an angel really is. And angelic behavior and appointments are treated like, I don't know, in a very, very non-angelic way.
Is there a war going on?
Yes, there is. There's a war every day. And whether you like it or not, we are all in it. And it starts in your heart. And it's with your hands and your feet and your body and your sexuality and your mind. And it's with everybody you meet.
I would like to read for you, Father, something sent by Dr. Richard Boylan. And it is on the internet. worldwide right now. Monsignor Balducci, a Vatican theologian, insider close to the Pope, has gone on national Italian television 5 times in recent months to proclaim that extraterrestrial contact is a real phenomenon. He announced that the Vatican is receiving much information about extraterrestrials and their contacts with humans from its embassies in various countries such as Mexico, Chile, Venezuela, and more. Monsignor Balducci said that he is on a Vatican commission looking into extraterrestrial encounters and how to cope with the emerging general realization of extraterrestrial contact. He provided the Catholic Church's analysis of extraterrestrials, emphasizing that extraterrestrial encounters, quote, are not, in capitals, demonic, and are not due to psychological impairment, and are not a case of entity attachment, but these encounters deserve to be studied carefully, end quote. What can you tell me about this?
Well, Monsignore Corrado Balducci is now, I think he may be my age, in the 70s.
Yes, sir.
I think, what I can find out. He is now a blowhard. You know, he's not a publicity seeker.
Mm-hmm.
But the subject he discusses, and we're discussing now, and we'll be discussing this for quite a while, Art, especially in the light of things that will happen in the next year. We're discussing a subject which is so volatile. It's really the source.
You hit a touchstone
with my ear. Pardon me, and everybody listening, please pardon me. It's a volatile subject, like a natural glycerin. It's ready to explode, because here's the central nub which Corrado Balducci and everybody faces, is this. Until the relevant governments, and I realize I'm walking on thin ice here.
Thin ice, indeed.
A thin ice of security. National security and international security.
Yes.
So I've got to be very careful. And Corrado Balducci, I hope he should be careful too. Until the new relevant governments, it's not merely the government of the US, but other governments are willing to put in public the facts about what they consider extraterrestrial activity, it is impossible to make sensible statements that make sense, statements that make sense. And until they do, we're in the dark, really, as regards the general public. We haven't got this scientifically controllable facts, and I don't think we're going to have them very soon.
We have discussed this before, Father, but there is no question the Vatican has astronomical observatories all over the place. One on Mount Graham, for example, that somehow the Vatican applied every bit of pressure that it had and blew by all the environmental concerns and got that facility in place. And the question, just a good, simple, flat-out question, is what would the Vatican be looking for in space, Father?
Well, as you know, the central doctrine taught by the Church is that Christ, Jesus of Nazareth, was the Son of God. He died for all men, all rational beings. And hitherto, in the thinking of Christianity, this has been confined to the human race. Now, Balducci rightly points to phrases of Christ, of Jesus, that we pass over too easily. When he appeared to them after the resurrection, he said, fear not, it is I. All power has been given to thee on earth and in the skies. And while Balducci knows that, and as far as he can make out from the little details, the sparse details revealed by the relevant governments, that if there is any rational activity, technologically advanced beings, they're not in our galaxy. They're transgalactic. But we don't know. We have no concrete evidence. And it's like everything else, until we get concrete evidence given to us so we can touch, see, and hear, and measure, we're in the dark. But of course the Vatican is absolutely riveted by the possibility that there are rational beings, not necessarily human beings, outside in a transgalactic. We don't know. So the great proviso, the great temporary proviso is to say we don't know. We suspect, we think. Certainly, you see, in the time of Columbus, when he set out with those 3 ships to go to the Indies, one of the revolts, one of the mutinies he underwent was that the sailors believed once they passed a certain point that the nails holding the ship's planks would fall apart.
That's right.
They would disintegrate.
Right.
And they also had, we now know, the medieval myths about the men in Tibet, the 3-headed men and the 4-headed lions and the 5-tailed, 5-foot dogs, etc., which are all mythical creatures. And so a lot of people are inclined to say, now all this blabber, all this talk about extraterrestrials is really, it's tricks of the demon. No, that's not rational thinking at all.
You're saying it is rational to conclude there is life out there, and obviously that's why they're looking for it?
It is rational to say that there is such secrecy about what is known by authoritative government centers that we have to wait and see.
All right, Father, hold it right there. Good long break. We'll be back from the high desert. This is Coast to Coast AM. Obviously is paying close attention to space. There's very close attention, and they're looking, I suspect, for something other than the rings around
Saturn. Look, Art, put it like this. If, I say not, it's an if, it's a hypothesis. All right, Art? So I hook on this because it's a very ominous statement. If the relevant government, I stress this fact, the relevant government were to submit to worldwide inspection and knowledge any facts proving the existence of rational beings, not necessarily humans, of rational beings outside our galaxy. This would be a crisis for the Roman Catholic Church like no other crisis in its 1,000-year history.
I have always presumed that myself, Father.
It would be a crisis of gigantic proportions. Look, let me give you a shadowy parallel to it. When Columbus did get to the Indies, namely get to the New World, and he brought back the news, and things had to go slowly in those days. Carrier pigeons couldn't do it, and they had no telegraph. But when they came back to Europe, that there had been millions of human beings who never heard of the gospel, who never heard of Calvary, or of Jesus, or of the church. Theologians were stumped in the beginning. And they started a discussion, which is still going on, by the way, which in Latin was always called De Salute Gentium, about the salvation of the peoples outside the church, outside of Europe, which was considered to be totally Christianized. St. Thomas himself, for instance, says that it is possible that Homo silvestris, a man living in a forest in Dalmatia, possibly hadn't heard of the church before. Human beings heard of the church. And suddenly they find out there have been millions, perhaps billions, of human beings that never heard about the church, were never baptized.
Yes.
The crisis was huge in theology and started a whole new thought in Christian theology, which is still going on. Now, if we find out there are beings, not necessarily human again, technologically advanced, beyond where we are,
And they don't come down already knowing of the Word of God.
they know nothing about it. Supposing they have they got souls? Were they saved by Christ? Must we convert them? Must we preach the gospel? Must we explain the Bible to them? We don't know. And the church men are totally unprepared for it. They're too busy fooling around with enneagrams and a lot of garbage of that kind. But serious theology, and a remark, it is I who say it, and I'm paid to know it. In the church today, in the Roman Catholic Church, there is no dominant school of philosophy or theology worthy of the name. There is no theological development, no philosophical development. Just a potpourri of modernism and of phenomenology.
Well, let me give you something that might fit right into that category. I interviewed a brilliant man, I don't know, a week ago, I think, 2 weeks ago. His name is Matthew Alper.
Matthew Alper.
Alper, A-L-P-E-R, and he wrote a book called The God Part of the Brain. And it is his contention that mortal beings, we are here for 70, 80, 90, 100 years, not long, that our brain, in defense of the entire concept of death, the brain actually developed in its own defense what he calls the God part of the brain, which compels those who are very much afraid of death to believe in something, to believe in anything, that even when you go and you examine the tribes that have not been touched by humanity, if it isn't God, they do worship something, and it is his contention that it is a natural part of evolution. And so that's about the best I can do in explaining his position, but it was well articulated, and I would assume you would put it into the category you were just describing.
Yes, anyway, I being a Roman Catholic, I firmly believe that without divine grace, which is not at all produced by anything human, by any endocrinological development, or by any neurological development in man, in a human being, but it's totally gratuitous from beyond the stars, from beyond this visible cosmos, and straight from the heart of God to people he has said he loves so much that he sent his son to be with them, to be one of them. I believe that's the Roman Catholic position on the whole point. And while there's no doubt about it that if one adopts the theory of evolution to some degree, it's so rickety nowadays that one is inclined to sort of stand back from it like a bag of bones that suddenly is collapsing. But really, between you and me and the Holy Spirit. But it's in the evolutionary mentality as a hypothesis, because it's only that and it still remains that. Then I suppose we could talk about neurological and endocrinological development from primitive man down to the present moment. But there is that chasm, Art, that chasm between me and the divinity, which is utterly unknowable and awesome. And I can never have it, and I desire it. I see its reflection in the beauty of this world, of beautiful people and beautiful things, but I can't have it of myself. I have no power. I must depend on this God bending down in the midnight of my human misery and saying, I lift you up to my level because I love you. That's the Christian message. And doubtless there have been evolutionary trends sometimes. I come from Ireland, you know, and sometimes I must say, because being Irish, I can say the following: some of the people I used to know in Ireland certainly seem to have missed out on evolution of the time. To a certain degree.
All right.
But nobody else but an Irishman could say that about Ireland.
That's
Otherwise,
exactly
it'd be
right.
revolution.
Yeah, that's right. Let's take some phone calls.
Sure.
Eastern Rockies, you're on the air with Father Malachi Martin. Hi.
Hello, this is Michael in Lincoln, Nebraska. I have a question for you, Father.
Hey, Michael, how are you?
I'm fine, sir. Thank you. There was a big controversy a while back. It was in the magazines and stuff about the Pope coming out and saying that Mary is co-redemptor with Christ.
Yes, he's not going to do that.
Now, I was going to ask you, what is your personal opinion? Do you think that Mary is co-redemptor with Christ?
No, I don't think. Christ is the sole redeemer. But the position she occupied during his life, and the position she's occupied amongst Catholics anyway since then, and in early Christianity until the Lutheran Revolution, or revolt, I should say, really, in the 16th century, was that through her you reached her son. It's very easy once you know the mother to get the son to do things. But that he is the sole redemptor. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, now you're saying if you get to know the mother, then you get to know him. So are you saying that if we pray to Mary and the saints can answer our prayers?
Oh, yes, they can. Of course they can. That's why
In my Bible, I'm sorry, sir, but in my Bible it says that there's only one mediator between God and man, and
that's right. That's Christ. And he's the mediator. He mediated between Mary and got her the grace she got. She wouldn't do a thing except for him. Okay, but once she's been installed, she's a powerful lady.
Okay, now, is that what the Catholic Bible says?
That's what the Catholic Church says. You see, Michael, for Catholics, the Bible is not the sole source of revelation. The Bible is one, tradition is another. Tradition, the Church is a third.
Tradition is a source of revelation.
Yeah, source of revelation. See, the Catholics hold that every apostle, until the death of the last apostle, there was a continual revelation going on, which is not confined to books. It went into tradition, to actions, to customs, started by the apostles all over the then known world. And those, you see, the Bible nowhere says that the Bible is the only source of revelation. It's an extraordinary embarrassing to fling at non-Catholics, but the Bible nowhere says, I am the sole source of revelation. Nowhere says it. It doesn't. An assumption made by the Protestant revolt.
He's got a good point, doesn't he?
I mean, but the Bible says that the word, the written word, the logos, is God.
Well, the logos in that case is Christ.
Yes.
Right, he is the word. And what we mean by that, the Catholics mean by it, is that Christ is God's expression of himself. Because, see, Michael, God in himself is unknowable. I can never know God in himself. I can only know him in Christ. Yes, he's the Logos. He's the Word, the Verbum.
Right.
He's
the mediator.
Yes, he is everything. And he's the only friend we have in time and in eternity. You know, he's the only one who finally can give me light and give me consolation and finally give me immortal life, which I yearn for and I lust after, but I can't get by my own self.
Right. All right, Colin, thank you very much. Father,
Yes.
you are familiar with the current science of cloning, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
There are many scientists who are now saying that they have cloned Dolly, they have cloned other animals.
And I'm sure they're cloning people.
Are you aware that there are stories now suggesting that blood has been recovered from the Shroud of Turin?
Yes, I know they say that. I don't know. I want to ask Captain Jackson, isn't that his name? Is the Army, the Air Force man who has gone into all that. I should talk with him one of these days. They say they have recovered that blood.
Yes. With blood there would be DNA.
Obviously.
With DNA there would be the possibility of cloning, and while it might be an unusual way to consider the second coming of Christ,
Yes, I get the picture. Yes.
they're talking of it, Father.
They are. Well, there's one difficulty in the way of art, and it's this, for me anyway. It's this, that even twins, identical twins, with all these similarities and common instincts, They're distinct personalities. They're always distinct. And there's a marvelous study of twins that were separated at birth and then brought together in adult life.
Yes.
Which brings out this very clearly that they have a common heredity.
Yes.
They marry the same type of woman.
Yes.
They bald in the same way.
Yes.
Their pubic hair is the same, and their height and girth and their inclination. But they have distinct personalities. They're very distinct personae. And the wife of one twin couldn't be attached to his twin.
But is it not possible to imagine that with the miracles that Christ performed,
Yes.
if they get intact DNA, they will discover a difference in the DNA of Christ?
I'm sure they will find a distinction, a difference. I'm sure they will, because
Wouldn't it kind of be the final irony, Father, if the scientists were the ones to propagate the second coming?
it would, but it seems to be highly improbable to me, but mentally, logically, scientifically, apart from revelation and the unicity of Christ, I must say yes. From that perspective, it seems possible. From the point of view of revelation and Christ's unicity, his unique position, it will never take place. But that's where faith steps in.
Well, there may be surprises that lay ahead.
There may well be. There may well be. And the churchmen have to face them, and that's why the general closure or really lip-sealing, lip-slipping amongst responsible churchmen in Rome and elsewhere about transgalactic beings. But they won't take refuge in saying that it's demonic playthings, it's the devil playing with our senses to deceive us.
Yes, they seem to be moving away from that.
Yes, anyway, it's not sensible because, by the way, in the whole history of demonology and Luciferian interference with human beings, there's no parallel to that. Except unless you go to Goethe's Faust, in which you have his descriptions of the witches' Sabbath on their brooms. But that's all fantasy.
All right. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Father Malachi Martin. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, where are you?
This is Zip from Juneau, and I have two quick questions for you guys.
Oh, Juneau, Alaska. The wet capital of Alaska. Yes, sir.
It does rain here quite a bit. Well, rain will. By the way, we're 79% water, and the rest is love. There's only about down water. Well, I'm not going to call to talk about Bible or beliefs. I know where you stand on that, and I've accepted Christ in my heart. I know, and I know where I'm going. So what I wanted to ask you, sir, was have you ever considered that UFOs might be the mythology of the 20th century? Seems how each civilization, when it's reached its pinnacle before it fell, it always had created its belief system around its technology. And since our God is our technology, would it be, just saying this to assume that we would create gods and its messengers in the age of technology? Yes, I thought of it as that. But in that, I put the Star Trek series, and a lot of the science fiction, that it is a created mythology based on our technological advances, yes, as a mythology. But jeepers weepers, pardon my language, but what a poor mythology compared to Greek and Roman and Indian mythology. The richness of that mythology, the lessons for human beings, even in the midst of the Greek gods and legends, there's such lessons about human moral behavior and human behavior as such. But in Star Trek or in such productions, it's sort of a dry dust mythology that has none of the old moralizing, and I love the word moralizing, and I love moralizing tales. There's none of that, and therefore I haven't got much attached to it, but I agree with you. It is a mythology created by our technology.
All right. We don't have a lot of time. First time calling line, you're on the air with Father Malachi Martin. Hello.
Floor.
Yes, sir. Where are you?
This is Ron from Minnesota.
Hi, Ron.
Hi, Father Martin. I had a question. You said that you believe that the Antichrist is alive in the world today.
Yes, I do.
And I also believe this. I was wondering what your view on the rapture of the church is.
All right. Father?
Well, there's no, in the Catholic tradition about the Bible, the rapture and all that is overshadowed by the normal belief of the church for 1900 years that at one particular moment there's going to be a great assemblage in the presence of Christ of all men and women who have ever lived and are living, and there will be the general judgment and the particular judgment and the condemnation of the wicked to hell and the leading of the just to heaven forever.
Father, on that note, hold on. We'll be right back. This is Coast to Coast AM. Good morning. Our Father Martin talked of persons perfectly possessed by the devil.
Yes.
You can ignore this question, Father, if you wish. In the opinion of Father Martin, is Bill Clinton perfectly possessed?
And no comment.
I had a feeling that you might say that. All right, let's go back to the lines. First time caller line, you're on the air with Father Malachi Martin.
Hello?
Hello there.
Yes, this is Annie from Valencia, California.
Yes, Annie.
Father, I have a couple of questions for you. The first one being, do you know Dr. Charles Stinson?
Dr. Charles whom?
Stinson,
Benson? No, I don't.
out of Dartmouth?
No, I don't, ma'am.
Okay. Another question I had was, I understand that you were a former Jesuit,
That's what I was for 25 years.
and what order are you in now?
I'm not in any order. I belong to a bishop, and I have, you know, I write books and go on radio and TV.
Right, okay.
That's when I'm 77, retired in that sense, but not retired in the active sense.
Right, you're still a priest.
Oh, I say mass every day.
Right, okay. I had another question that I thought of, and I wondered if you could shed a little light on this. The underground city.
Underground church or the underground?
No, city. The underground city in or near Rome.
Are you referring to the catacombs below the Vatican?
No, I'm talking about an underground city that is actually in place now for the New World Order. Many of the Japanese and the Chinese and many of the European countries have started it's underground, and it's near Rome, but it's not.
I mean, you have the advantage I don't know anything about.
I don't know a thing about it either. No, I guess we're going to have to wonder if she's already gone, but I've never heard anything about it. Here is a criticism, Father.
Yeah.
Let me read it to you.
Sure.
Aren't you and your guests' comments are pointing out what most true Christians know to be the inherent blasphemous nature of the Catholic religion? Your guest himself made a blasphemous statement when he said that Jesus was, quote, bled like a pig, and, quote, excuse me, and he better ask God to excuse him too. Jesus was bled like a lamb. Anyone at all familiar with the scripture knows. I think he should make an on-air apology.
Well, I will make an apology. It would hurt the sensibility of anybody. We don't bleed lambs, actually. We do bleed pigs. Well, and I wasn't comparing Jesus to a pig either. And it's taken like that. It is very offensive, and I apologize without any difficulty. And I won't use it again since I've offended at least one other person on the face of the earth with that phrase. And I see that it could be taken as indelicately. And I apologize very much because I venerate the Lord Jesus as my Savior.
Well, I'm sure the intent was not negative, and I understand what you're saying.
I apologize. I sincerely apologize, and I take correction on that point.
Wild Card Line, you're on the air with Father Malachi Martin. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Where are you, sir? calling. This is Ron in Los Angeles. Hi, Ron. You're going to have to yell at us a little. You're not too strong.
Sorry.
Oh, that's right. Go ahead.
Good morning, Brother Malachi. Good morning to you, Ron. What's on your mind?
I have a question about one of the Trinity, the Holy Ghost.
Yes.
Never explained to me. And I have a paradox for you. You said look to the sky.
Yes, that was in one particular period last year.
Last year, 97,
1990.
Christmas night, a halo in the sky.
That's right. Well, no, it was a period from the beginning of spring to, from the end of winter to the end of spring. There was a possibility that there would be some sign in the sky. There wasn't.
Yeah, I saw a halo.
Yes, there was, but it wasn't the sign I was looking for.
You were looking for?
No,
Does the color of the halo make any difference?
I don't think so. And the sign I'm looking for is not that kind.
Would have been unmistakable.
Oh, unmistakable.
Well, that's my paradox. What was it?
Well, Ron, I'd rather wait until we will see it, because it will be in the sky in these years. But it hasn't come yet. We will know it when we see it, unmistakably.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Father Malachi Martin. Hi.
Hi, this is Charles in Tampa.
Hi, Charles.
I'd like to ask the Father, given that God is so incomprehensible, if he doesn't think that each culture will come up with a name and a mythology and a symbol set around God by its own cultural metaphors, and thus any other culture that we meet will know God, but by a different name.
Yes, if I understand the question, here's what I would say to it. Charles, that's the name?
Yes.
That he is unknowable in himself, but he has taken trouble to reveal himself. And as Jesus said, who sees me sees the Father. Who knows me knows the Father. And that's the only way we can know God, but we can know him in Christ. And whatever variation each culture puts on that, beginning with the color of the skin, because there are black Christ, there are yellow Christ statues, and there are Occidental-looking Christ and Chinese-looking Christ. That cultural variation is only a human way of talking about one and the same person. And when we finally look on his face, we will find that he's unique to himself.
Well, of course, when you explain something to a child, you use metaphor because you're explaining something beyond his comprehension.
That's right. That's right. It's a very simple thing. It's a question of pedagogy. But I'm sure the reality of Christ is stunning and will entail every trait of beauty that it.
Call toll free 1-800-618-8255.
Than that. But we have got to wait until we see him in heaven, please God, before we know that.
Thank you very much, sir.
Cultural difference doesn't make a difference.
All right, thank you, caller, and take care. Dear Art, Father Martin has made several references to a different government in the United States in the coming years or so. Can he explain what he refers to?
Well, here's what I mean. I think that the tendency, in spite of the Congress, by the way, they give a recalcitrant of our Congress, I think that the whole concept of national sovereignty is changing, and that laws will have to be passed, will have to be observed and accepted in states not made by Americans, but made by greater bodies, to which we will be bound by treaty and pact and agreement. Number one. Number two, you and I have made various references tonight to the Y2K problem.
Yes.
It's coming on us. Apparently, according to authorities just published, the two departments of government in the United States who will not be ready for Y2K are the Department of Defense and the Department of Transport. But it does mean, and then some big authority, not Greenspan, but somebody of that stature, suggested that we should declare 3 months a worldwide recession because we won't be ready for it. We simply will not have converted the chip to cope with anything beyond 2000.
This is what I am told by every single person.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, but they don't want to frighten people. Therefore, I'm sure there's going to be something resembling martial law. In some form or other. If there's that, disruption of supplies. Supplies of fuel, electricity, water, food.
So people should prepare with the basics.
They should, but the point I'm making, that's true. But the point I'm making is that we will be constrained by laws that change the face of America, at least for a while. And we may never go back. In fact, you can read spiritual writing currently who say this is a lovely, neat trick to impose Big Brother on us all.
Sure.
You can suspect all sorts of conspiracies. But de facto, we are now walking into an era when anything can be disrupted. I must tell you one thing, Art, apropos, if I could take just 1 minute.
Yes.
I went to the Emporium about 2 months ago to buy some food. And on that day, down it's the Emporium here on 3rd Avenue, where I go. And it's in the basement, and the lines were all crowded, and all the women were, the tellers were dispensing money, and the several people were walking out with food, and there were lines, and there always are lines. Suddenly, the electricity died out, and no computer worked.
Yes.
And we stood in mute silence. Powerless. We couldn't get our money. They couldn't take our money. We couldn't get our food. We didn't want to go. We had already taken our supplies in the usual little cart they give us. But it was a symbol of what can happen when the Jews stop. It was very frightening.
Yes. There was a movie that I recently saw, which I just at this moment cannot recall the title of. But it was about exactly that scenario. The power went off, and the power stayed off. And in the first little bit of the time, everything was relatively normal. People got candles. But very shortly, the food stopped, the sales stopped, cars stopped, people began running out of gas. It turned into absolute anarchy, murderous, I might add, anarchy, very quickly.
And there had to be martial law.
Where possible. Now, we are a nation of 260 million people. And really the only thing that allows law and order to reign is the basic respect of the massive number of people.
That's right.
For the law. And if enough of them turned against the law, there could be no law enforcement. There would be no law enforcement. There would be anarchy.
There would be chaos and anarchy. There's no doubt about it.
If you ever get a chance, my wife just handed it to me. It was called The Trigger Effect.
The Trigger Effect.
Yes, and it was about exactly what you were just discussing.
Is it a book?
It is a movie.
Oh, I see.
It is a movie. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Father Malachi Martin. Hello.
Hello, this is Ron from Vancouver. And, hi. And I'd just like to say it's an honor talking to you, Father. Actually, the very first time you came on, I forget when it was, months ago, was the very first time I started listening to Art Bell. And I've been an Art Bell fan ever since. Yes, very good. And I was wondering, this business about the cloning, I really don't think there would, if they would clone, it wouldn't really matter, because wasn't Christ's juice power spiritual, and did it indeed come from God himself? Well, Christ was God, is God, yes, being the Son of God, through God's Word. Yeah, it would be, that's why I said to us that theoretically it sounds possible, practically speaking, he couldn't be cloned. Well, you know, why would all the,
unless God chose that as the method, Now, I just sort of idly, what a great joke on the scientists, but
Yeah, it would be. The only thing is that the Revelation, which we're supposed to accept, we do accept, says that Christ himself, the historical figure Christ, will return in his entirety on the last day for the final judgment. Not a clone, but himself, with that body and that blood and that divinity, which we receive at Holy Communion.
have you given much thought to how far off that day is?
Yes, I have. I don't use the word far.
I mean, we meet on a night when there is news of an exorcist brutally murdered, when there's news of murders and suicides in the Vatican, and things that are just virtually unthinkable. Would have been unthinkable. And these seem to be signs pointing towards something.
Of course they are. And the behavior of what we call El Nino is part and parcel of it all. And the earthquake in Japan, 7 point something, is
7.7, Father.
What's that?
7.7.
7.7, yes. I consider that to be a part of the signs. Because we, as usual, we're going to wait until it hits over the head.
Father, would you be surprised to know that I have a very good friend in Australia who watches the U.S. naval satellite maps of ocean temperatures very carefully, and 6 months, or even better, before this El Nino began to build, he told us it was coming. Now, the El Nino has just started to lessen, and I just spoke with him, and he said, guess what? There's, off the coast of Japan now, even bigger heating going on, indicating to him that there may be a larger El Nino building for this coming year.
My Lord, that is very, very, I'm going to retain that fact. I'm going to retain that fact. It's significant.
Well, there are undeniable changes going on. A 75 square mile portion of the Larsen B ice shelf just broke off. Scientists, yes, are saying that the entire ice shelf is now critically unstable, and they expect the entire thing to fall off shortly.
Is this not the Arctic Circle?
Antarctic. The Antarctic.
But that is very interesting. I find it very relevant and interesting. You see, I think that all of us, without going to extremes, we all have a feeling that something huge
Is coming.
is developing and coming. We don't know what it is. We're being sensible about it. We're not getting hysterical. But there is something happening. There's no doubt about it.
No, you live one day at a time, of course.
You do.
And life goes on, but there is this building feeling of imminent change.
There's no doubt about it. And it's a malaise, really deep down inside us. It's a malaise. It's an uneasy, queasy feeling that we're sensing something which we can't name, and we're undergoing a change, and we don't know into what. We know what we were. We don't know where we're going.
Yes. An ending and a beginning.
That's right. It's a historic time to be alive and to be conscious. But when I think of my ancestors, my near ancestors, my father and mother, who were married in 1909 and who grew up in the Victorian era, my God,
Yes.
tranquility and the peacefulness and the unsurprised behavior of their world,
Father, I have kept you up very late. I have one last hour of the program, as usual, which you are welcome to, or you may slip into the arms of Morpheus and grab some sleep. It's your choice at this point.
Yes.
What would you like to do?
I will go on.
You will go on.
I will go
Well,
on.
my lines are going crazy, so a lot of people want to talk to you. What I'll try to do is devote the last hour as much as possible to the phones.
Okay.
All right, very good. My guest is Father Malachi Martin from New York City. If you have questions for him, we will devote the bulk of this last hour to your questions. It is indeed a strange, unnerving night. Very, very, very unnerving. A double murder and suicide in the Vatican. A priest performing exorcisms, themselves murdered brutally. Satanically. Strange times, when you admit, folks. From the high desert, I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast AM.
Which I love doing. I really love doing. And as long as I make sense, keep me out. Cut me off when I stop making sense.
By the way, you sound so very good. Bob Crane, we had Bob Crane send you a telephone, and
I know I got that lovely telephone. It's installed. I'm speaking out.
what a difference it makes. All right, listen to this. Hi, Art. Please tell Father Malachi Martin. This is from a programmer in Arizona that the Y2K problem is all too real. No hoax. It's every bit as serious as he believes it is. If the problems had begun to be addressed in the last few years, there might have been hope. Now, it's too late. Prepare, Art? There is no better preparation than faith in Christ. From a programmer in Arizona.
It's very realistic.
And very, very soon as well.
Oh, yes, it's around the corner, Art.
All right, this as well. Please ask the Father to tell us anything he can, or he's willing to, about the prophecy of Fatima.
Well, the prophecy of Fatima, without going into my background in this matter, the prophecy of Fatima is not a pleasant document to read. It's not pleasant news. It implies, it doesn't make any sense unless we accept that there will be, or that there is in progress, a wholesale apostasy amongst clerics and laity in the Catholic Church. That the institutional organization of the Roman Catholic Church, that is the organization of parishes, dioceses, archbishops and bishops and cardinals and the Roman bureaucracies and the chancelleries throughout the world, unless that is totally disrupted and rendered null and void, the third secret makes no sense. And number two, the other salient characteristic about it is that it means intense suffering.
I don't know what the third secret is, Father.
The third secret, Lucia, Sister Lucia, who's still alive, the only surviving convert in Spain, she was prevailed upon by her bishop to write down the third secret. Our Lady conveyed two secrets to the children. We know the first two, but the third secret, Lucia, since she was the only survivor, refused to tell anybody. And finally the bishop said, look, we're all getting on in age, sister, write it down, and we'll send it over to the Pope. And she said, well, it's not destined for the Pope, it's destined for the people. Well, the Pope will tell the people about it. So she wrote it down, and this is in the 30s, and then in the 50s it was conveyed over to Rome to Pius XII, Pope Pius XII, and the Cardinal Ottaviani, who was the head of the Holy Office at that time. They put it away because Lucia said that it shouldn't be opened except by the Pope in 1960, because the thing would be clear then. So it was opened by John XXIII in February 1960, and he proceeded to say that it wasn't true. It was unreliable. And the children didn't know what they were talking about. And Lucia didn't, because when she got this supposed secret from the Virgin, she was illiterate. She was under 10 years old. So she couldn't know what she was talking about. And John XXIII, then in his opening speech at the Vatican Council on October 11, 1962, referred contemptuously to the three children as prophets of doom. And said, we today, we don't need have anything to do with these prophets of doom, because we are in a different age. And so he suppressed the secret.
And it remains so today?
It remains so today. And it's Paul VI read it, Pope Paul VI, and did nothing about it. John Paul I read it, did nothing about it, but he only lived for 34 years as Pope. And John Paul II has read it twice and has done nothing about it. He has spoken about it in public, but he has done nothing about it. And that's the status of the secret today.
Do you know what it is?
Yes, but I'm under oath.
Do you consider it to be the ravings of a illiterate child?
No. It's a very exact description of what is now happening, and apparently what is going to happen shortly, but in cold, hard terms. There's no exaggeration, there's no use of adjectives or adverbs or anything like that. It's a blanket statement, a very factual stated boldly, with no adulteration, no flourishes, no purple patches.
In other words, they got exactly what they asked for.
Yeah, it's a frightening document. It's very frightening.
All right, I promised to go to the lines. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Father Malachi Martin. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, this is Ron from Vancouver again.
Hello, Ron.
Hello.
Oh, you were on earlier, Ron?
Yes, I was.
You're only allowed one call per show, my friend.
Well, can you ask the question that I asked?
What question is that?
Is the sign in the sky that Father is supposed to see, is that the sign of a cross?
Well, I think you're not going to get your answer. At least if I read his comments earlier, you will know it when you see it. In the meantime, relax. First time caller line. Yeah, there you are. First time caller line. You're on the air with Father Malachi Martin. Hello.
Yes, this is Eric in Houston.
Hello, Eric.
Yes, one quick comment and then a question. And in addition to the mounting, I don't want to be flip about it, but the mounting body count, let's not forget the Archbishop down in Guatemala that was assassinated.
Oh, yeah, let's not forget that. You're quite right.
And the other thing I have to say is you've spoken, very early on, you spoke about a secularizing tendency in the Vatican, and I'm just wondering if you're not looking at the past through sepia-colored glasses. Leaving aside the Borgia popes and all that, I mean, in the last 100 years, there was a sort of, up until very recently, kind of a cozy relationship with the church in Italy and the mafia. You had the relationship with the Vatican and Mussolini that established the Vatican State in 1929. And then you have the fact of the Vatican accused of running Nazi war criminals on their way to South America.
Yes.
Would you care to comment?
Well, you sort of listed a series of deficiencies of Vatican officials in the last 30 or 40, 50 years, although I would not characterize the relationship between Mussolini and the Vatican as in any terms loving. They hate each other, but they both profited. Mussolini wanted the support of the Vatican. He was afraid the people were revolting against him. He wanted its approval, and the Vatican wanted to break out of its closure and get its own sovereign state, which it got in 1939 only through Mussolini. But about restriction, though, sure. There were churchmen who provided the rat lines for the escaping Nazis. There's no doubt about that.
How could that possibly have been justified?
It wasn't. Justified by money and ambition and stupidity and evil. And nobody's justifying it today at all. We all
How then, Father, does that separate the Vatican then or now from whatever else goes on in the world that we decry and worry so about?
Well, it's something which we hope will never happen again. There's no excuse for it at all. None whatever. And I'm the first person to say it was wrong. And there's no excuse for it. It was a bad mistake by churchmen bent ideologically and not with any love of Christ. So there's no excuse for that. Now, secularization I'm talking about, though, is where the behavior of Vatican officials doesn't differ from the behavior of the Dalai Lama, or the Archbishop of Canterbury, or the Protestant monks at Paisi. And indeed, there is a great assimilation taking place. That is secularization. Besides the Pope appearing on the same stage as Bob Dylan, okay, it's a funny situation.
It's funny. Wildcard Line, you're on the air with Father Malachi Martin. Good morning.
Good morning, Art. Thanks for holding me over here.
All right, you're going to have to kind of yell at us. You're not too loud. Where are you?
Okay, my name is Brad, and I'm in Paulsville, Washington.
All right.
Brad, what's on your mind? Hi, Father Malachi. Hi. Well, bear with the divinity. You've been a hero for, since 1974. Thank you very much. It's a very nice thing for a poor old guy like me to hear. You must admit, Art.
Indeed.
Well, now to my question. I consider myself to be something of a seeker, and in recent years I've kind of stumbled across something I've read through another scholar by the name of Zachariah Sitchin. And he became such a center of attention for me that I went to the trouble of trying to learn some of these languages myself so I could read it in the original. And some of the things that I found reminded me a lot of what I was seeing in the Old Testament. And am I practicing something that is akin to apostasy here, or what's going on with this? Am I seeing what I think I'm seeing, or is there a connection here? You must tell us what you're seeing. Well, I see the story of Abraham being told, but in a different way. Father Abraham. And I see it being told from the viewpoint of someone who is being visited by something that may or may not be of this earth. And treating with it as if it is a living thing. And it causes me concern on the one hand, but on the other hand, as it is something that is written in clay, and something that is carried forward, I really don't see Mr. Stickfoot in it. Neither do I, actually, Brad. Neither do I. I'm cautious in my adhesion to it, but I don't see Mr. Stickfoot in it either. I'm just terribly cautious until I can get what we moderns call facts. But I agree with you. I'm very wary of it all because I want to be sure of the facts. That's all.
All right. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Father Malachi Martin. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Where are you?
I'm in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
This might be a frivolous question considering what's been talked about tonight, but you performed exorcisms and things like that, and I was just wondering if it was possible for an evil person to do the same to someone who believes in God.
It's possible for a person who's possessed to what?
To perform something akin to an exorcism on someone who does believe in God. In other words,
for evil to corrupt a good person.
Yeah, in the way that, you would exorcise an evil spirit from a person, could someone do the same, take a good spirit from a person? Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense in the sense that I know of cases where somebody whom everybody would have said lived with a good spirit, was with the angels, was with the heavenly, was successfully turned around, yes.
Boy. So many things seem possible that a casual observer and thinker of our Lord just wouldn't imagine to be possible. Little children condemned to hell by their parents who know how to do it, and what you just mentioned. Father, hold on, we're at the bottom of the hour. It does move quickly. From